Thank you very much. Let me tell you why I think we're here. A number of years ago, I had a conversation with the head of leadership development for a large Fortune 500 company that had just recently completed a major executive development program involving the top 250 people of the organization. The price tag was something in excess of $2 million. And I turned to this person who was responsible for it all, and I said, Ed, what do you see that's different now than a year ago? And there was a long kind of pause, and he said, Jack, I can't see that anything has changed. That's the question before the House. I don't believe that needs to be the outcome. In fact, I believe it can be just the opposite. But that's the context in which I want to kind of address my remarks today. How do you make leadership development really pay off? My objectives in our session today are as follows. I want to present to you some convincing evidence of the importance of this activity. Now, by virtue of the fact that you're here, I'm assuming that most of you are believers. Although it's interesting, this is not intuitive to everybody. Some people don't see the connection. I'd like to kind of see if we can demystify this thing we call leadership by giving you some kind of empirical data that we've collected about what leadership really is. And in doing that, maybe provide you with a useful conceptual model that would help you think about this topic, which for some people seems to be so amorphous and squishy. I'd like to kind of propose some new objectives for leadership development. I think that in the past we've been setting rather modest and maybe not sufficiently challenging goals for ourselves in this field. And finally, I want to present some research on the most effective ways that we can go about developing leaders in organizations. And that will be the bulk of my presentation today. So, the risk of over-promising and under-delivering, that's what I'm going to try to do in the next hour. This is an important issue for organizations. Recently, a major survey was done of executives in Fortune 100 companies, asking them the question, do you believe your organization has a sufficient bench strength to carry it into the next decade successfully? 70% of the respondents said, no, I don't think so. You've all seen surveys about the lack of trust that a large proportion of employees have toward leaders. It's even worse in Europe. And one interesting metric is that only about 13% of corporations during the decade of the 90s achieved the goals that they had stated that they were going to achieve to the financial press. My conviction is that there's an enormous correlation between business performance and the quality of leaders. Let me give you just a couple of data points that may be of interest to you. Myself, my co-author Joe Folkman and I had the access to a database that was a very extensive database of 360-degree feedback data. And I'm assuming that most of you know what we're talking about. Questionnaires given to subordinates and peers and boss about the performance of a manager. We were able to, in many organizations, compare that 360-degree feedback data to the actual performance data of that organization. And by performance data, I'm talking about retention, customer satisfaction, employee engagement and commitment figures, and particularly bottom line net profitability. This happened to be a large mortgage banking organization. And if you looked at those managers who got the lowest 360-degree feedback scores, that's the bottom 10%, and these are corrected numbers from your handout. Bottom 10%, what you saw was that those managers' offices, this was a mortgage lending organization across the United States and Canada, those offices had annualized losses of $1.2 million. The middle group had profits of $2.5 million, but the top 10% leaders had profits of $4.5 million, approximately.